and I'm your host, Emma Levez-Laroque. Most of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, a certified plant-based chef, and a Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And I'm the creator of the Plant-Based Eating Support Network group. These monthly events are part of the Plant-Based Eating Support Network group, which is an online subscription-based program that provides ongoing nutrition and cooking support for people who are interested in learning more about the health benefits in particular, but also the environmental and other benefits, and practicalities of a whole foods plant-based lifestyle. Registration is open for April for anybody who's here who isn't already part of the support network group. If you are interested, please feel free to reach out to me for more information. We're going to be focusing on recipes and information around bone health next month. So every month we have a different theme, and we have recipes and challenges and all kinds of cooking classes and nutrition talks. So it's lots of fun, lots of inspiration. We have about 50 people in the group now, and they all work hard to inspire each other, which is amazing. And it keeps me super motivated and excited about it as well. A plant-based lifestyle has so many benefits for our health, for the environment, and also, of course, for the animals that we share the planet with. And there are so many incredible people that are working to raise awareness about these benefits. I've been doing this work in Pell River for about 6 years now. And of course, there are other people in Pell River doing this work, but there are many, many people around the globe. This is becoming a bigger and bigger topic that people are talking about for all kinds of different reasons. So this speaker series is designed to bring the voices of a variety of experts to members of the support network group. And I'm also pleased to be able to open these events to the wider community as well. We usually feature medical professionals. The support network group is very much focused on health. So next week, actually, we're having an incredible doctor come to speak to us on Tuesday. But this month, of course, in honor of Earth Month, what we eat plays such an important role in climate change and has huge environmental impacts. So Elena Martin, who is a wonderful part of our support network group, and I were chatting, and we thought, well, this would be a great opportunity to bring that aspect to the conversation as well. So Elena, who I don't know if you're seeing the same order as I am, but she is to my left on my screen, is a mother and nutritional scientist. She's waving so we can see who she is. She's a member of the support network group, as I mentioned. And she believes that food is one of the most powerful individual climate actions we can take in our daily lives to increase human health and environmental sustainability. Born and raised in Germany, Elena gained research experience in academic and federal science and finished her university with a PhD in applied and environmental microbiology in Berlin at the Federal Institute for Occupational Health and Safety. Having worked as an industrial hygienist and in microbiological testing, in 2018, she had her son, Owie, and thinking about his future, she has become passionate about using her knowledge and skills to encourage conversation around environmental impacts of our food choices and changes for a sustainable future. Elena has a great presentation lined up for you tonight. There will be questions, time for questions at the end, but if you have questions during her presentation, please feel free to type them into the chat box. And if it works, I will interrupt her and ask her the question as she goes. And if not, then we'll save them till the end. But please, she very much, I believe, wants to encourage conversation here tonight. So do feel free to participate in the conversation. Those of you who, a lot of you already probably know Elena, she's super passionate about this topic. I'm so delighted that she's part of the support network group, and I'm really loving getting to know her and enjoying her passion and for sharing her knowledge and skills in this area. So I'm really excited to welcome Elena tonight. And with that, I am going to hand it over to you to go ahead and share your screen. Elena, you're muted right now if you're talking, so you just have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Yeah? Okay, cool. My computer is not responding.
Is everything okay?
I need to start over again. My computer wasn't responding.
There we go.
Okay. Now, thank you, Emma, for inviting me, and also thank you for helping me in narrowing down the climate talk, because climate and food relationship is such a big and complex topic that it was very helpful to focus on the meat part of the climate food relationship. And I called my presentation Meat or Forest because they are kind of connected with each other. And this is what we will talk about tonight. Like Emma mentioned, I became a mom in 2018. And since my son was born, I automatically also became a climate activist, as in the same summer, Greta Thunberg had her first climate strike. And so I was, from the very beginning, as a young mother, very concerned about the future of my son, because now I decided to have a child. So now I need to take care for him and make sure that he has a safe and secure home in the future. And as a nutritional scientist, I already draw automatically to the topic food, as I started feeding Owie with 6 months solid food. And then I realized, oh, what do I put in this little body and what do I feed him? And then I realized how the climate is connected to the food. And the forest topic became really fast another research topic for me, because we are living in this beautiful town in Pearl River surrounded by forests. And when you're a climate activist, you automatically become a forest defender, because forests are such an important key role. They are playing such an important key role in the climate change battle. And so our children already inheriting a damaged planet, and we, the people of 2021, we have the power of reducing this damage of this planet, and we have to act now. And with my scientific background in animal husbandry, I am focusing on the meat industry. This was in 2007. I collected air samples in poultry houses. These are called confined animal feeding operations, CAFO. And this was a Peking duck stable, and the ducks in there were like laying eggs. This was their only purpose, for laying eggs for 1 year, and people harvested these eggs every day. And I was responsible for measuring the air, that the air is not too dangerous and toxic for the workers. And it was an eye-opening 3 years of investigating poultry houses. And I was not only in duck houses, I went also to chicken houses and other animal feeding operations. And I was really shocked what we humans do to the animals. And this little duckling I have there was hatched outside this circle. So in this duck operation, they had like 2 hatching days per week, Thursdays and Tuesdays. And the eggs get incubated immediately, and with time and temperature, they're managing that ducks hatching on a certain day at a specific time. And there were 9 ducklings hatching on, I think it was a Wednesday. So they had to get killed because they're not fitting in a global production chain. And we rescued these 9 ducklings, and they had a life on the farm. And yeah, so I couldn't turn away from this, and I had to talk about this, and that's why it's still a part in my climate activism. But let's dive into the presentation. So I would like to start with the Anthropocene. A really hard word for me to learn. And this is actually a new era. So we humans started a new era on this planet, and it's called Anthropocene, an era in which humanity is the greatest force shaping Earth's terrestrial system. And this means that we are changing the landscape and determine the most recent geologic time on the period on Earth. And this looks mostly like this. We are applying geometric or geological forms and shapes onto the landscape. And these changes in our landscape affecting the climate. Let's have a quick look at the CO2 concentrations in our atmosphere today. So you can see in this graphic that the gray line is the CO2 concentrations, and the red and the blue bars are the temperatures. And before the 1880, is it here, like in the beginning of 18th century, the CO2 concentration in the air was 280 ppm. This means parts per million CO2. And in 2021, we reached well over 400, at the moment 419 ppm CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere, and it is directly correlated with the increasing temperature. So if we are continuing like this and not doing anything immediately, we will have the 1.5 degrees reached by 2030. And a hotter Earth is a much scarier place when we know it. It will be disasters coming into our children's future, like floods and droughts and fires and heat waves and pest infestations and hunger and who knows what. And the good news are that we can still reduce this damage, and we know exactly what we have to do to prevent the most severe catastrophes. So what do we have to do to fix it? So by 2030, we have at least to halve the emissions and to have to reach by a net zero around 2050. Our end goal is to reach 350 ppm CO2 in the atmosphere by the year 2100. But we are not on the path to reach this goal at all. And we have lots of climate solutions. These are only like some in the main we have to focus on, like, for example, that the fossil fuel reserves need to stay in the ground, that we have to quickly transition into 100% renewable energy with solar, wind, and hydro energy, and that we have to protect our forests to be forests, and that we have to eat more plants. And tonight we are talking about the last 2 points, that we have to protect our forests and eating more plants. And this has many to do with the CO2 emissions from the land use, like how we are using our land. So in 2018, there was a carbon footprint report published. It's called EcoCity Footprint, Powell River's Carbon Footprint. And in total, Powell River writes using 3.5 times more of the Earth resources than they are available. This means we are living way outside of the resources we actually have. And if we are only looking at the food emissions, we are having like almost 3/4 of the food emissions coming from red meat and dairy products. You can see this in this little graphic, like the red slice here is like the 54% the red meat. It's meat in total, fish, meat, and eggs. And the bright green one is the 18% for the dairy products. And 89% of these emissions from food are associated with the land. And the transportation part has only 2%. So the transportation plays a minor role in the whole carbon footprint. That's why we are focusing on the land. And where is the land coming from? We are using from the forests. So we need to value our land we are using. We can use 1 acre of land for either growing 50,000 pounds of tomatoes, 53,000 pounds of potatoes, 30,000 pounds of carrots, or only 250 pounds of beef. So livestock is actually the world's largest user of land resources. And the beef industry is rising. So more people eating higher meat consumption, and therefore rainforests with highly sensitive ecosystems getting clear cut. And in 2018, Brazil was the largest exporter of beef meat. And in general, you can say that animal-based food has a higher land use than plant-based foods. So why are forests so important? Well, they are producing the air we are breathing, and they are playing a key role in this climate battle. They are actually sucking out the CO2 out of the atmosphere and storing it in their roots and trunks, branches, and needles. And when we are clear cutting forests, either for meat production or for soft lumber, we are taking the ability of storing carbon. I learned a lot about the BC forests because I was part of the organizer of the BC Wet Forest March a couple of weeks ago. And I learned that our local forests actually are powerhouses. They are like the highest carbon storage and per hectare worldwide. And they're still getting clear cut, and the slash burning also is like a huge transmitter for emissions. So BC is actually also called the Brazil of the North. Instead of using it for meat, we're using it for lumber. So we can still save forests when we're reducing our meat consumption. Even if we're not saving our own forests, we can save forests worldwide. To reduce the planet's damage to a minimum, we have to shift our patterns, our diet patterns. It's just not unavoidable. We have to eat differently. And I really like this graphic because it shows how little, just a little bit, you can already change something. So if you're looking at this is the graphic, and it compares like the Western diet with diets with less meat. So even if you're only replacing beef on lamb with other meat, you can still eat pork and chickens and other white meat, you're already having a reduction in the CO2 emissions by up to 20%. And if you're going vegetarian and still eating cheese, you can save up to 30% of CO2 emissions. But you can save the most CO2 emissions by going plant-based. And the Eco-City report actually says that Peru has to reduce 70% of its beef consumption. So we need to banish the Western diet. And this graphic I took from Emma's presentation. Actually, I really liked it. It clearly shows the value of land. So if we are continuing with our Western diet and eating a lot of red meat and other meat, we are using way more resources than we are allowed to. If you can see in the graphic, and you can feed way more people with plant-based diet than with a Western diet. And in general, beef requires 20 times more land and emits 20 times more greenhouse gas emissions than any other edible protein from a plant. And worldwide, the meat industry creates 7.1 gigatons of greenhouse gases annually. This is a huge amount of emissions. Peru, for example, the whole Peru is producing 166 kilotons. So it's a totally different scale. In total, the meat and dairy industry takes like 14.5% of the total man-made emissions worldwide. This is a significant part of it. This graphic shows again that the beginning of the food chain is the highest emission part. So the first says land use and farm, and these are actually the two who are counting the most. So on the bottom, the bars is the top 10 greenhouse gas emission rich food, and the top is beef. And you can see that the dark blue and the green the first two bars is the land use change and the farm stage. And the transportation is the really light green one. This one, it plays really a minor, you can barely even see it sometimes in the graphic. The transportation plays really a small amount. Of course, if food is getting flown in, has a higher emission than getting shipped in, but how the land is used is having a huge part of the emissions. So when we are eating a burger, we need to know what is the influence on the environment. And I really also like this graphic because it shows the equivalent kilometers driven per kilogram food. So if you're consuming 1 kilogram of beef, it's equivalent to 176 kilometers driven by I think this was a Honda Civic sedan. If you're just going to pork, you're using only 79 kilometers. But if you see the lentils, with the very last point, it has only 6 kilometers per kilogram. So between 6 kilograms and 176 kilograms is a huge difference. And then the question comes, how much meat do we actually eat? Excuse me. So in the top graphic, the world map, you can see the countries with their different meat consumption. And the dark red one is more than 100 kilograms of meat per year per person. And Canada is in the range between 50 and 100 kilograms. And it was calculated in 2019 that Canadians eating 70 kilograms meat per person per year, which is 154 pounds. This is 7 times more red meat and 3 times more eggs than recommended. So then there comes the planetary health diet. And this is a diet calculated by scientists. The Eat Lancet Commission was asked in 2018, can we feed 10 billion people in 2050 a sustainable diet? Because in 2050, we will be 10 billion people. And they found, yes, we can. And they calculated the planetary health diet. So in this health diet, they said, okay, you can still eat meat, but it's more a luxury thing. And they're saying if you're eating meat and you're staying below 15 kilograms, then you're still eating within planetary boundaries. And this means 100 gram red meat and 200 grams white meat per person per week. Or beef once a month, for example. And as we have a growing population, we have a demand of protein food, and it cannot be meat, dairy, and fish alone being the protein source. It's not possible. We don't have enough land and water and feed to get the demand by animal protein. So eating plant-based protein as a dietary protein in our daily lives, which is the industrial countries, is an essential shift to win the climate change battle. So we have to eat more plant-based proteins to win this battle. So following a planetary health diet is the most powerful weapon we have to increase our human health and environmental sustainability on Earth. This is what the scientists say, and which I'm agreeing with, that we just have no other choice. It is clearly shown that we cannot continue like we are doing right now. And so I learned a lot about plant-based proteins, and they're actually climate heroes. There's, first of all, a huge variety. I'm still learning about all these plant-based proteins. And they are so healthy. Since I'm joining the support network with Emma, I'm learning so much more about the health benefits. And they cover all amino acids, because I'm hearing all the time that people are afraid that they're not getting all the amino acid they are needing. And they're actually fixing nitrogen, so they don't even require any fertilizer. They are sucking out the nitrogen out of the air with the help of bacteria in their root system, so they don't require any fertilizer. And they have a minor carbon footprint compared to meat, what you just saw with the kilometers. and they're really economically sustainable. I wanted to look up the price for kilograms of lentils, but I forgot. Maybe Emma, you know the price, but I think it's way cheaper than meat as well. Yeah, and you can even buy it in bulk, so you can even go zero waste technically if you want. And I learned that you have to change your whole kitchen techniques. So it's not like you can just, for me, it didn't work just going plant-based. Really need to learn about these plant-based proteins, like how to soak them, how long you have to soak them, and yeah, learn about their effects on our gut. And I also realized that processed plant proteins are allowed. So we are encouraging you to eat, for example, lentil pastas, and you don't have to go like, you can have a transition form with them. That's why I have another slide here with processed plant proteins, because at the beginning I was really like opposed to use them because I don't want to have another industrial food on my plate. But the market of these plant-based proteins actually growing. They reached last year $4.3 US, and they are projected to reach by 2025 $8.3 billion US. And the variety is increasing. But as I'm going through the grocery shelves and reading the ingredients, there are definitely some processed plant-based foods which I wouldn't take home. And these are the ones which are genetic modified. So I'm always looking for non-GMO soy proteins in them. And some of them definitely have, for example, palm oil and soy from Brazil, which is loaded with pesticides. So you have to know what you're buying and putting on your plate. And we can still shape this market. So I hope that the plant-based processed foods won't be rich in palm oil, because this is just no one better.
Do you mind if I just say something about all of this? I think I agree in terms of the environmental benefits. These products are very helpful. But in terms of protein, I think it's really important for people to realize that all food has protein in it. Beans are a wonderful source of plant protein, but they're not the only source. For example, quinoa is the grain quinoa has a complete amino acid profile. So when you were talking about some of the amino acids, I mean, it's very easy to get all the protein you need by just eating a diversity of plant foods. But I think we focus a lot as a culture on protein and how am I going to get enough protein if I don't eat meat? But the bigger question is, how do I get enough fiber? Because most people, many more people in our culture are deficient in fiber because they're not eating enough plant foods. Whereas protein deficiency is not common certainly in our society here. So I just wanted to point that out. But I like I said, I agree and love all of these things that you said. But I did just want to say, too, beans aren't the only plant food we can get protein from.
Yeah, we are eating actually too much protein in our culture, so we shouldn't focus so much on protein. But I know that people are worried about the protein. And of course, the plant-based milks. This was actually the first I transitioned with because it's just so easy to use. And even there, you can have different choices. But in general, a glass of dairy milk produces 3 times more greenhouse gases than any plant-based milk. So just start with one of the milks. I would recommend the oat milk because I learned that cashew has some issues with ethical sourcing and the work conditions. And oat, hemp, and soys are really good alternatives and can even grow here in Canada. And there are also some tricks in the market. Of course, there's always the sweetened versions or the vanilla and chocolate, and you're getting the most for your health when you're choosing the unsweetened plant-based milk. And the almond needs to be mentioned because if you can see here in the graphic, almonds using a lot of water as well, and they're also monocultures, like every disadvantage. But in regards to greenhouse gases, way better choice than dairy milk. So let's focus on the climate enemy, which is the Western diet, how we can ditch this Western diet in our culture. And it won't be easy. Like changing eating habits is really hard, especially as older you're getting. I had to do it myself because I have a chronic kidney disease. So I went through a transition already, and it's tough. But if we're working together, we can definitely do this. And I love Emma's support network group because you're just realizing that you're not alone. And I listed here some local government climate actions, but also individual climate actions. And if you don't have time, you don't have to go through all of them. But I would really like to see that our local government is offering education about climate-friendly food. I don't know if it can be phone counseling or any other education. And that we are getting connected with our local nutrition experts and implementing the planetary health diet into our local guidelines. And we also have to increase the affordability of healthy food. I mean, it cannot be that food which is making us sick and is known to as risk factors for chronic diseases is cheaper than healthy food. So there definitely needs to be some governmental action that everybody can afford healthy foods. For example, the World Health Organization categorized red meat, especially like the processed red meat, as carcinogenic. So we know that processed red meat can cause cancer, and healthy food cannot be afforded. So there's kind of like a discrepancy about there's a big gap is there. And we need to declare the Western diet as a threat to our human health and the climate. So if we are recognizing these two things, a transition should be possible.
Do you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, please.
For 1 second, I just want to share something with everybody. I think it's really appropriate for what you're talking about right now. About a week ago, there was an article that came out about a hospital in Lebanon that is the first hospital in the world to offer a completely 100% whole foods plant-based menu. They don't have any animal products in the hospital at all anymore. And I think this is the way, it's just an indication, it's the way of the future. And the quote that was from the article says, "Our patients will no longer wake up from surgery to be greeted with ham, cheese, milk, and eggs, the very foods that may have contributed to their health problems in the first place." So I just wanted to jump in with that because I think sometimes this feels like it's overwhelming and it's a change that's never going to happen. It's so difficult to make. But I think that the more that we recognize all the reasons for doing this, the climate reasons, the environmental reasons, the health reasons, it just solidifies, it just sort of all starts to come together. So sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to.
It makes just so much sense. It's like I learned that in Canada, we are paying $190 billion annually for medication and disease for chronic diseases, which are like where unhealthy diet is a factor for these. So it just makes sense to prevent these diseases for coming up than rather have to treat them. So, and when you are having a heart attack from too much cholesterol in your body, and then you don't want to have a high cholesterol breakfast the next day after the surgery. Yeah, makes sense. And there are really like local governmental climate action happen regarding food. We have the nutrition coupon program here in Powell River, which is in BC with the BC Association of Farmers Market together. And low-income families and seniors and pregnant women can get these coupons and buying fresh local food directly from the Powell River farmers market. And so participants eating and supporting local produced food. And in 2020, Powell River actually invested more than $20,000 towards this program. And they also sent a support letter to continue this program, which is fantastic. And there's also tons of individual climate actions we can do. We don't have to go through the whole list, but just to start with eating more plants is the simplest one, and learning new plant-based recipes. I think it would be also helpful just to write down an eating protocol, like a dietary protocol, maybe for 3 or 7 days, just to recognize how much animal products do I actually eat. And then you can also learn how much meat you're eating compared to the allowable amount of meat within a planetary diary, you know, like how much is 100 grams of red meat or how much is 200 grams of white meat. And there are lots of local actions happening, like the Meatless Monday movement. Join them, and you definitely get support from Emma. And I found another good action is, for example, to join a local CSA program. You will get every week a veggie box delivered or picked up from your local farmer. So you have to deal with a lot of veggies. I signed up for this program and I'm looking forward. And or joining the support network group, the plant-based support network group, and ask questions, join the conversations with your friends and families and colleagues. Hopefully we can have also some potlucks again together to share like food in real life, not online only. And Climate Action Per River is serves at the moment plant-based recipes for a community cookbook. So if you have a favorite plant-based recipe, you can actually send it to climateactionpr@gmail.com and we will publish it in a community cookbook. You're welcome to send a little picture or a personal note with the recipe, and it doesn't have to be an own creation. You can also send us a recipe from a cookbook or a blog you're enjoying. Just include the citation. And we had said that the deadline for recipe submission is the end of March, but we actually still don't have a date for printing the cookbook yet. We are hoping to have it printed by the end of Earth Month. So please still send your plant-based recipes and we will still add them into the cookbook. And we also have an exciting plan for you to try if you want. It's a sweet lupine. They're actually a rising star in Europe's kitchens. They're also called the soybean of the North. They're very similar to soybeans in their nutritional, but also in their cooking behavior. And they were grown here on the Terra Nostra farm on large scale last year. They had like 300 plants growing, and they are donating all the seeds they harvested to Per River Rice if they want to grow them in their own garden. And they're very easy to grow. They're also nitrogen fixers, so you don't need to fertilize them with nitrogen. And get in touch with us if you want to have a little sweet lupine package. They're like the white flower lupines. They are just low in alkalides, so you just have to soak them overnight like other dried legumes and cook along with them. Maybe Emma can create a recipe for us. I have still lots of sweet lupines in my cupboard. Yeah, and this is the end of my presentation. This is actually a picture I took in a restaurant in Alberta, and they are calling a veggie burger with chicken breast. So they have a totally different level of education needs to happen in this country, and apparently. So I hope you're enjoying the veggie burger without chicken breast. Okay, happy Earth Month, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Happy Earth Month.
That's a great way to kick Earth Month off. Thank you so much for your presentation. So let's go back to the gallery view here, and why don't we take some questions? So Maureen says she'd like to try some sweet is it lupines or lupins? And possibly grow some. How can I get some? So I think you said to contact. What was the address here?
climateactionpr@gmail.com. We are also planning to give them out in person. Alette already packed them on a little packages, and we have also a little protocol how to grow them and what to do with them. So we have them ready to spread. We were hoping to have an event somehow in Wellington Beach, but this might not happen. We have to stay curious.
That's awesome, and I've just put the email address in the chat box for anybody who's interested. That's great, and I would love to do a cook. Wouldn't that be great? A cook-along on I've never even heard of them, so that would be great. I'd love to try them out. And Maureen is saying, excellent presentation, Elena. Thank you. So go ahead, Bill. Yeah, hi. Nice to see you.
So we you know, Elena, we discussed the Western diet and its relationship to climate. I'm wondering if you can share any information on the Eastern diet. And, you know, we've got like 350 million people in North America, or maybe more, but compared to China, it's nothing. So what are they eating?
Who especially?
Well, Asians.
Well, there's actually a country who are increasing their meat consumption currently. So they're actually on the wrong side of rising in the meat consumption. I know that Germany is exporting a lot of pigs to China.
I think that's where the rise in meat consumption is coming in, is with countries like China, with large populations that are you know, wanting to eat more like the Western diet. And in terms of, I know that as well, from a health perspective, you know, some of the countries that used to be blue zones, for example, like areas in Japan, as they adopt a more Western diet, of course, they're also getting all the Western diseases. So I think I think in Canada and the US and really Western countries, this, you know, a plant-based trend is you know, I've seen it absolutely explode. I mean, it's still a very small percentage of people are eating this way, but it's becoming more and more popular. But some other countries are going in the opposite direction, as Elena said. Sorry, I talk too much. I can't.
My mouth is dry, so it's good that you're talking.
That'll do it.
I might actually have an answer to that question.
Who do we have here? Sorry, I can't see.
Oh, sorry, Mark Gisborne.
Oh, Mark, go ahead. Sorry.
Pork consumption. Interestingly, China actually consumes more pork per person than in North America. And this is pork. North Americans tend to eat a lot of beef, and that's not as popular in China. In China, according to the statistics, number of different sources, it's around 65 pounds per person in China for pork consumption, and North America is roughly 50 pounds per person. But also the importing of pork to China is really big right now because they have major problems with what's called a hemorrhagic swine flu. It's like Ebola, where the pig gets sick and it like bleeds out of the face, and it's really horrible. It hasn't spread to North America yet, so knock on wood, because it's a really big problem.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for that insight. Do you have anything you wanted to say about that, Elena, before I move on to the next question?
No, I agree. Like I learned that also Germany is sending a lot of pork leftovers, actually, what Germans don't eat, sending to China, because it's not anymore that people eating nose to tail, that they're only like picking the best pieces. So there's actually a lot of waste in this industry as well, which gets shipped out, yeah.
Rachel had a comment. She said so many more fish and chicken as people are dropping red meat. Yeah, I think that as we all kind of struggle to figure this out and figure out what perhaps is the best climate diet, those things. And I actually see people from a health perspective as well, switching, you know, from red meat to fish or chicken, thinking that it's a lot healthier. And in fact, chicken in particular is not going to do you any favors. So I think it's all transitions, but I think if you can, the more Just as you said, the more plants you can include, the better.
Emma,
Yes.
I ask you a question about something called textured tofu.
Okay.
When I lived in Malaysia for 3 years, and we had a lady who used to cook for us, and she would make she'd make a chicken curry. Well, she thought it was a chicken curry, but it had something in it called textured tofu. And I have to say, if you had a bowl of that on top of some basmati rice, if your eyes were closed, you would have thought you were eating chicken.
Well, I have a feeling it's probably something like the soy curls that Martin sells at Townsite Fruit and Veg. It's something that we share a lot of, or we do some recipes and cook-alongs around in the support network group, and it's very, very similar in texture. We just did a Thai bowl, sort of sounds similar to what you're talking about, Bill.
So they were chewy?
Yeah,
they were like nuggets, chicken nuggets that were chewy.
Actually, like strips. They look like kind of strips of chicken, and you just rehydrate them, and then you can rehydrate them in vegetable broth or some kind of yummy liquid, and then put them into a curry or whatever.
What did you call them?
They're called soy curls, and they're in the bulk section of Townsite Fruit and Veg. Yeah, and Martin often shares recipes too for them because he's the only place in town you can buy them. Okay, sorry, I've got a question.
I don't doubt that.
What's that?
I don't doubt that.
So Peter is saying, thanks, Elena. Meat production takes up most of the agricultural lands. How much of the land is also devoted to feed for animals? It's a great question.
That's a good question. I don't have a number, like how much is for feed, but yeah, the problem is that animals in confined farming houses are getting fed high energy food that they are getting faster to the slaughter's weight. So they're getting a lot of soy, especially grown on rainforest land in Brazil. And soy is unfortunately also genetically modified, which means that the pesticide application is has to do, it's a must do. And I know the numbers in Canada, but I know that Germany is importing 70% of soy for feed from Brazil. And I don't know what the regulation is in Canada, but in Germany, it's not allowed to feed genetic modified soys as human food directly. So we couldn't buy soy curls made from rainforest soy in Brazil, but the meat you are eating could have eaten like the soy is from Brazil. So yeah, the feed plays also a really big part in the whole land use. We can also feed the people with the land, not animals.
And the second part of his question is, how much CO2 do our world's forests take up overall compared to overall emissions, and what role do oceans play? There's lots of big questions there.
Oh, yeah, those are big questions. I actually don't have the numbers for oceans, and I don't really have numbers for forests as well, because each forest is taking up CO2 in different rate. I know that our BC forest with the old growth just storing also a huge amount of carbon emissions, and younger trees, for example, taking more CO2 up while they are growing. So there are all kinds of different numbers out there. What was the answer to the questions? Yeah, I don't know the overall numbers.
I think there are a lot of resources out there. A lot of that, we were just talking about this before the meeting started, and perhaps we could look and share some of those resources for some of you who are interested in other, a bit more research. There's, the UN, the World Health Organization, all these major organizations doing a lot of research on this topic.
Actually, our BC forests are acting at the moment as a carbon source. They are not functioning as a carbon sink. So our forests actually producing too much CO2. So we could use our forests as climate battle weapon, but we don't use them because clear cutting is like a dead zone. There's like no carbon sequestration happen. And also the slash burning even increases emissions. So our whole forest management is out of control at the moment, I would say.
Janet says, does anyone have any thoughts about the use of animal products in a lot of potting soils and topsoils? Is there any interest in vegan friendly farming? I love this question. Do you want to comment on it? Do you have any comments on that?
Use of animal products in a lot of potting soils? I haven't really heard this.
So I think probably what you're talking about are, you know, fish fertilizers and chicken manure or bone broth, that type of stuff, blood meal, that type of thing. So there definitely is and Rachel says her sister has been studying this. So I'll say what I know about it. And then Rachel, why don't you unmute yourself and you can let us know if you have other things to share. But there is a movement called the veganic movement, the veganic growing movement. And there definitely are people who are doing this and, you know, studying what needs to be put into the soil to make it rich without animal products. So yeah, so definitely have a look at that. And Rachel, did you want to add anything?
I can add something.
Okay, Bill, go ahead.
I happened to be in the PetSmart store the other day because my wife needed a bird cage. And we were shopping, and I just looked at the girl that was serving us and I said, is there such a thing as a vegan dog? And she went, oh yeah, there's all kinds of people coming in here looking for pet food that doesn't have any animal products in it. So what do you think about that?
I think that in terms of the research that I've done on that, in terms of pet foods, is dogs can actually very easily be vegan. You need to look at, just like with humans, you need to look at the diet again and see what. Oh, Janet's got some addition there. There definitely are, you know, that's definitely possible. With cats, it's a little bit harder. There are a couple of things in cats' diets that can be. So they have to be supplemented, and honestly, I'm not. I can't remember exactly what they're called. Anyway. I won't go there because I don't know exactly, but that needs a little bit more research. But it definitely does.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. I think, you know.
I mean, pets consume huge amounts of food.
Yes, and certainly, you know, sometimes I mean, they have health issues as well, because a lot of I've heard it compared, like the cat foods and dog foods that we feed our cats or our pets sometimes are like sort of similar to fast food or junk food for us. So in terms of their health and in terms of the animals that are being fed to them, and, you know, there's all kinds of issues around it. When you get into this whole topic, you know, we're talking about one aspect of environmentalism tonight. But I mean, there's so many other, you know, aspects of this, the water usage and the pollution and the soil degradation and all kinds of aspects that where plant-based options provide benefits. And then you get into the whole ethical piece of it. And that's a whole other issue that Janet shared a wonderful link with us. And so we're going to got a couple of different, we've got someone who, my dog is vegan. Rachel, we use Veggie Royal Canin, CANIN from the vet. So that's a great idea. There are so many people who want this. These products are out there. And Rachel was saying, I don't know a lot yet, but my sister was telling me we have to watch to make sure we aren't destroying the microbes, and so many fertilizers do that. Oh, so true. And Annabelle's agreeing. Maureen, dogs are not designed to be vegan. Their digestive tracts can't absorb the nutrients. So we won't get into that debate tonight, but yeah, that's something to research if you have a dog and you want to feed them that way. Yeah, anyway, certainly it's interesting and lots to learn. So are there any other questions for Elena? We're at 6:55. People can, you can feel free to unmute yourself and just ask the question if you want. No? Oh, Cynthia, go ahead.
I'll ask a question. I'll ask a
Okay,
question.
go ahead, Mark, and then we'll hear from you soon.
That's Tom.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, this is Tom,
Sorry, Mark.
and it's okay.
Hey, Tom.
I know we're about to end this tonight, but what struck me about this presentation is the enormity of the ambition of changing a diet that most of us have had since birth, and doing it in extremely rapid time, in like less than 10 years. My motivation for changing is less about climate and more about health, but that could be very different, and there could be other motivations. So that's my question. What other motivations besides health and doing good for the planet come to mind for changing our diets? Thank you.
Can I just jump into that? It's Annabelle.
Let's hear from Elena and then Annabelle. Sure.
Sure.
Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that one of the motivating factors for me was actually cost. So one of the ways that I propelled myself to change in terms of legumes and lentils and beans was to explore that, because I knew that that was a valuable source of protein and it would reduce the cost of my overall budget for food. So that was one of my motivating factors.
It's a great point, Annabelle. And I think that, when you do look at the cost of food these days is so crazy that I think that it's that definitely is a really great factor for another good reason to do it. Especially if you start getting into cooking your own beans and things like that, it's even more economical. Elena, did you want to add to anything?
Well, I mean, health and climate are already like really big points, I think. For me, it was enough to transition. Like Colleen is saying, cruelty of animals, this was also a very big part of my motivation just to continue this conversation. Like when I went into these confined animal houses, it's, if you see this world, what we created, and there are so many waste animals, like male chickens or male ducklings or male calves, they're waste of an industrial sector. So I'm not really sure if it makes sense to have wasted animals in our production chain. So there's, and the cost, there's a lot of points. Maybe we should have an overview of points for ditching the Western diet, because it makes us sick and it makes the planet sick. So
yeah, other things, some people are inclined this way for religious reasons, but I think those really are the top three in terms of, environmental reasons, health reasons, and ethical reasons. And so whether it's cruelty to animals or feeling like we want to respect other life on Earth, that personally for me, that was my initial reason. And what I see with people coming to this way of eating and this lifestyle is that usually you have one thing, you have a reason to come, the health or the the environment or the animals, maybe whatever, you come to it for that. And then all of these reasons start to present themselves and just become more, make you more passionate about it overall. We're getting lots of thank yous, and mine was animals, and yes, and whole foods, plant-based. I'm inclined to agree with Rachel. I came to it for the animals and I stayed for the health and then the environment. So we should take a poll and see.
Can I say something? Can I make a comment?
Sorry, Cynthia, go ahead with your question. Yes.
I just would like to say that the connection between COVID is interesting too, and it ties into the cruelty to animals, selling animals in markets, etc., and the factory farming issue as well. So I think that's the way we're destroying forests, and the way we're treating animals are making us sick. Just to add to the picture, really.
There's a really interesting book called Eating Animals, actually, by Jonathan Safran Foer. If any of you know him, he's a novelist, but he wrote a book about probably 15 years ago now, and it's all about the spreading of superviruses, which is, it's chilling to I read it all those years ago, and at the time I thought, oh my God, and it's a bit chilling because that seems to be what the direction we're headed in with all these things, and eating animals is a big part of that. So
got me started, Emma.
Pardon
That's
me?
the book that got me started.
Is that right? The Eating Animals? That's right. Yeah. There's so many wonderful resources out there, so many reasons to do it. So I think that Tom's point that, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel hopeless when we feel like, oh my gosh, this is so big and we have to make this change so quickly. But what keeps me going is things like this and talking to groups like this where people are, it's amazing to me how many more people are becoming interested in this and passionate about it over, and it's, maybe not happening as fast as sometimes we would like it, but it is happening. And it's the biggest thing that we can do on an individual basis. This is a decision we make 3 or more times a day, what we're going to put in our mouths. And for all of those reasons we've talked about, it's just such an important one. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. It's just past 7. I really like to keep these tight and respect people's time. So a huge thank you to Elena for your wonderful presentation, and to all of you for coming and sharing your thoughts. It looks like we've got lots of thank yous and this has given me lots to think about. So if any of you are interested, we're having Dr. Neil Bernard, the founder of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, next Tuesday. So please join us. It's another free presentation, and he's an incredible speaker as well. So with that, we'll wrap it up and have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.